Hey guys, welcome back to Brian's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail, and today we are going to be talking about some unsolved mysteries in Montana, as well as one absolutely miracle story that occurred in Montana. Now, most of these involved hunters that either have disappeared, or one in particular, the first case that we're going to talk about, which some of you might be familiar with. This guy just experienced something that was incredible. I mean, he survived an absolutely unreal ordeal. His name is Eduardo Garcia, and he was living in Montana. He was only 30 years old, and he was a hunter. He was a bow hunter, and it was hunting season in October of 2011, and he was out for one of his solo hikes and archery hunts, which he often did in the backcountry of Montana. And he was roughly 3 miles into the backcountry when he saw what looked like a deceased bear. It was just lying on the ground. Now, he had a friend that was working in a youth educational program, so he would often find things in nature and bring them back and donate them to his friend's school. And he went up to this bear thinking that he could maybe take some of the claws off to bring back to his friend's school. He approached the bear, and he could obviously see that it was deceased, and he went up to it and he used his pocket knife. Now, the bear probably weighed, let's just call it like 300, 400 pounds. And Eduardo himself at the time weighed maybe 165. He was a very, very in shape guy. He loved working out. His whole philosophy was eating and cooking right. He was an amateur chef. And he walked up to this bear, touched it, and he was shocked with 2,400 volts. Yes, you heard me right, 2,400 volts. Because the bear had walked and was lying on top of an exposed power line that was obviously in need of repair, and obviously Eduardo couldn't see it. So Mr. Garcia got blown back, and he said that the next memory he had was just looking up at the sky above him, and he somehow mustered himself to his feet, and he had to walk 3 miles to get back to somewhere that could help him. And he said, he quoted, he knew that the quickest and easiest way to get back was to cut through like the rocks and the bushes. But he said to himself, if he fell, he knew he wasn't going to be able to get back up. And this is one of the things that I think is amazing. He said, I realized it became a metaphor for his life that moving forward, sometimes it's not about doing things the easy way, but putting the effort in and taking the longer, slower journey. And he said it was just a miracle that he was able to physically get himself to this cabin. And he attributed it to being in shape and eating healthy and just having a positive mindset that he was even able to get to this cabin. And of course, once he got there, they rushed him to the Livingston Hospital, which, wasn't going to be sufficient. So then they medevaced him to the burn center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Once he reached the burn center, the doctors were just absolutely amazed that he was still alive. He spent months in intensive care. He had 9 electricity exit wounds. He lost part of his groin and his inner thigh area. He lost one of his arms that had to be amputated. He had this huge exit wound in his chest that blew away part of his, lost like 3 of his ribs. The damage was just unbelievable. The trauma and burn team that had to work on him, it was just... But the amazing thing was he had such a positive attitude through the whole thing. And what was so sad that about a month into all these surgeries, which, by the way, he had to have 21 surgeries from this incident. And then he was diagnosed with cancer on top of it. As if he couldn't take enough. But he said that it was amazing because it just, through this whole ordeal, it made himself sort of stop, pause with his life and come to terms with it. And he said that it made him a better person. If he could go back in time, he wouldn't change it for the world. He said it's 110% it made him love life more. And now Mr. Garcia is a co-founder of his own food brand called Montana Mex. He's a motivational speaker all over the world for healthy living. He made a documentary called Charged about his experience, which I highly recommend you check it out. I'm going to have a link in the description for links to where you can donate to his cause, where he goes around and speaks to people all around the world. I mean, he is just one of the most positive people I've ever heard speak. And I was fortunate enough to see some of the filming that they did while he was in the hospital. And even when he was going through all this, just the way he was just so full of life and so happy. I mean, for somebody that had gone through such a trauma, and to just have such a positive outlook. And he says that that's what really has saved his life and made him such a good person, is having that positive outlook. And I don't know, it just was amazing hearing this story, and I just wanted to share a little bit of it. I want you guys to definitely check out more of his story. Like I said, I'll have the link, but he goes around and he speaks to kids all over that have been bullied, and now he has a prosthetic arm. He had to learn to cook and do a lot of things all over again, but he goes out there, he still does his archery, he still does his hiking, he has his own restaurant now, he's the co-founder of his own food line called Montana Mex, and he's just a very, very inspirational speaker and man, and I highly recommend everyone not only check out his documentary, but all the other stuff that he does throughout the world. And I just wanted to share his story with you because it's one of the most inspirational stories that I've ever heard. Not only did he survive being shocked with over 2,000 volts, but then on top of that, he survived cancer, and he's gone on to live a very happy life. And what I love about the story is, and I know I already said this, but when he's interviewed and he is asked about whether he could change anything, he says no. He says that it's made him a better person and he wouldn't change anything for the world. It's opened his eyes to being a better person and to showing other people how to live healthier lives and be better people. And I think one of the most poignant things Mr. Garcia said was, quote, "That day, the worst day of my life, has actually made me a better person. Every day is a brand new day with light at the end of the tunnel, and it's so bright," end quote. And I just think that's amazing. And he's now known as the Bionic Chef because he does amazing culinary with having this prosthetic arm, and he's just been able to really carve out such a wonderful life for himself. And yeah, he's just a beautiful human being. And like I said, I highly recommend everyone check out his documentary. He worked so hard. He raised all the money on his own to make that movie, and he was a co-director of it. And it just goes to show you what a positive attitude can do and all the difference in the world that it can make. I mean, if he had chose to just be negative and feel sorry for himself, he probably couldn't have gotten any of this done. But instead, he embraced it and he found a way to make it positive. And I just thank him for sharing his story and thank him for everything that he's done, and wishing him all the best. All right, guys, before we start this next section, I just wanted to let everyone know it's been highly requested. I know a lot of other people have covered the case. I'm not trying to take anything away from anyone else, but a lot of people have requested I do it. And, the collective group of many looking at a case has been proven to be more effective than just one person looking at a case. So you never know what you can learn from listening to lots of different people. That said, we're going to be now talking about Aaron Joseph Hedges, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this case. He disappeared on September 7th of 2014. He was only 38 years old, and he was a bow hunter from Bozeman, Montana. And he was going elk hunting in the Crazy Mountains in Montana in early September of 2014 with two of his buddies, Greg and Joe. I'm not going to say their last names just because, well, you'll understand in a bit. The hunters set out for their trip on September 3rd at this place called the Cottonwood Lake Trailhead, which is 20 miles north of the town of Billings, Montana. Aaron was carrying his bow, which apparently he had just gotten a new sight for. Of course, he had his arrows, and he also carried a handgun and his pack. His companions, his two friends, they had rifles. Now they intended to make up their base camp around Campfire Lake, and they also had with them 2 horses and a mule that Aaron was walking with. Now apparently at some point the mule gave them some trouble, and mules are actually a lot smarter than people give them credit for. That's why they're so stubborn, because they are smarter. But in any event, apparently one of the mule, it started bucking and going crazy. Maybe something spooked it, and unfortunately it threw a bunch of his gear off into the woods and it went over a cliff. Unfortunately, his sleeping bag and other critical items were lost. So on the morning of September 5th at around 10 a.m., Aaron headed up towards Sunset Lake, where the guys had a cache, basically a storage area of different gear just in case of things like this. But Greg and Joe, his 2 friends, they told Aaron that he needed to come back because that area was very isolated and it could be dangerous at night. So he explained he was just going to go up, grab the supplies, and return to his friends. And they had 2-way radios that they were using to communicate. And these devices also had GPS locations, so it would show their locations. So the friends tried calling Aaron at around 4 p.m. And according to the GPS position, Aaron was on the very edge of the screen, like towards sort of to the right of where the fork is. I'll have a map to kind of give you an idea. But it looked like he had missed the fork and he was going up the wrong direction instead of coming back. He was walking northeast instead of coming back south. And that was the last time they heard from Aaron. Now here's where a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. So on September 6th, that's when the friends said that they realized that Aaron was missing because he failed to come back to the camp. Not to mention a snowstorm came in on September 7th and brought between 18 and 24 inches of new snow, and the temperatures dropped from the mid 40s to around 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, according to the friends, they said that they realized he was missing on either September 6th or 7th, either or. But Aaron wasn't actually reported missing until his wife, Christine, notified the Sweetgrass County Sheriff's Office, and that was on September 8th, and that was only after she had called Greg. She had been called by Greg, and they told her what was going on. Of course, by this time, Aaron's disappearance was obviously made no sense to a lot of people, including the authorities. The friends at the time, they justified their actions by saying, well, they looked for Aaron, but that he was a well-armed hunter and he knew what he was doing. He knew the area, so they felt that he would be fine. They also said that the remoteness of where they had the cache and the fact that there was no cell service, that's why they didn't call sooner. But to me, this whole thing is very suspicious, and you guys don't have to agree, but it's my opinion that someone's lying. The fact that these guys were supposed to be good friends and hunting buddies and they don't report him missing for almost 3 days. I mean, that doesn't make sense, especially with the heavy weather that came in. It doesn't matter whether you say he was a skilled outdoorsman or he knew what he was doing. They knew that he had lost a bunch of his gear and that he was going up to look for it. And they knew that he had wandered off course. It just, I don't know, it's very suspicious to me. Maybe waiting overnight, I could kind of understand, but of course, they got the search and rescue started, but of course, because of that storm, it made for a rough start. And with snow, snow covers everything, tracks, evidence. It also made it very hard for the horses that they were trying to get up to where he was, because this area, it was sort of a very narrow, like a very steep area on both sides. It's basically sort of a cliff. I'll have a map to show you some of the details. But the search and rescue teams were basically, going up the Cottonwood Lake Trail into the Tree Press Creek. They had dog teams, horse teams. They had over 60 search and ground rescue searchers. They had the National Guard and private helicopters. They had special night vision and, of course, drones. It was a very, very highly involved search. And then on Wednesday, September 9th, 2014, Aaron's boots were found just during the day on the east of Sunlight Lake, very close to the creek and the falls. They were It looked like, according to search and rescue, it looked like they were set there intentionally, just set on the side of the trail. Directly adjacent to the boots was a camelback water bladder, as well as a small fire pit with a partially burnt pack of cigarettes. There was a small fire bundle off to the right, along with 2 waist belts from his backpack that had been cut off. And there was also a tube that was used for the bladder that had looked like it had been removed. Now, this led the searchers to believe that Aaron had tried to possibly drink water, but it all really made no sense because they were in the same spot a day or two before that the searchers had already searched, and they were sure that they weren't there. It also made no sense, given the condition. Why would Aaron have removed his boots? There's no way that, even if he was suffering from hypothermia, why would you take your shoes off and then just leave them there? Yes, I know there's something called paradoxical undressing, but I just don't think it fits in this particular case. And unfortunately, even though they found this evidence around September 22nd of that year, they scaled back the search because they just had nothing more to go on. They had searched up and down and they had found no other clues. And aside a few small private searches, the case stalled. That was until the following summer, on June 22nd of 2015, when a butcher by the name of Roger from Wyoming, he was out visiting some relatives, and he came along Aaron's belongings next to this ranch in Sweetgrass County, and he found his backpack just laying up against a tree. Even more bizarre was he found an orange hunting vest, a bow, some socks, shirts, sweatpants. The backpack looked like it had holes in it, and he just assumed that there was going to be a body there based on animal activity and bear activity, but there wasn't. He found wrappers from granola bars along with some other snacks, and then he found Aaron's gun and driver's license that were inside the pack. I mean, how bizarre would that be? So, of course, he was just perplexed, and in his mind, he said, quote, "I just thought some out-of-state hunter got disoriented and wandered off." And he gathered it all up, and he brought it to his family members that were living in the ranch, which was in eyesight of where this stuff was found. And what was even odder, so they came in, they started a search, and little ways away, they found a thermos with and it was open, and there was an energy drink in it, but they found nothing else. I mean, how bizarre would that be? Because this was all within eyesight of the ranch. So the theory that he maybe have gotten lost and disoriented, why wouldn't he have just walked down to the ranch? And it wasn't until August 8th of 2016, so almost over a year later, that there was a tour group going by on some kind of a, guest ranch that they were staying on, and they saw a skull underneath a tree. Of course, law enforcement was immediately brought in, and they were shown the skull, and of course, they started a huge search of the area. And they found less than 80% of his body, but it was all within 50 to 70 yards of where they found the skull. And the majority of the remains were all located within this 20-yard area, spread out through it. Just according to search and rescue and law enforcement, said that it was very bizarre. It didn't make much sense to them. The only other clue they found was Aaron's Samsung cell phone, but unfortunately, due to the time that had lapsed, it had been corroded beyond possibility of getting any information from it. And the people that lived in and around that area said that it made no sense that if he had gotten lost and he was there, he could see their house from where they found all this stuff, and his remains. So it just, why wouldn't he have just walked down? The whole thing made absolutely no sense, especially considering what the weather was, where they found his boots. I mean, the boots and the fire pit, and then they found his pack with his weapon inside and his bow next to it. And they were said to have been placed there. It didn't look like they were just thrown there. It looked like somebody had deliberately placed them there. Plus then finding the open thermos with the energy drink, it made absolutely no sense. Now, it is worth noting that these men were known to trespass and hunt illegally on various properties. And one of the theories that one of the sheriffs that was working this case said was possibly he didn't go and look for help because he thought he might get in trouble for trespassing. But come on, to me that makes no sense. No one's going to give up their life for getting a possible ticket or whatever the fine might be. And it also doesn't make sense, the stories that the friends told. According to investigators, missing that fork is very hard because of its proximity to the Nork Forest Sweetgrass Creek, where that meets the Sweetgrass Creek. And according to them, he would have had to walk 13 miles without his shoes on in these deep snow conditions. Even if he had waited a couple days for the snow to melt, it makes no sense why he would take his shoes off. And further, he was an experienced outdoorsman. He knew the area, so why would he walk the wrong way intentionally? Further, investigators said that they found 2 separate fire pits, so that kind of leads you to believe that he was in that area for at least a day or two alive. And I don't know, just something about this case makes no sense to me. I feel like somebody isn't telling the truth. How did his gear all end up just sitting under that tree in plain sight? How is there an open thermos with an energy drink just sitting there that much time later? Why were his boots found 7 miles up the trail? It just absolutely, there's so many things that don't make any sense, especially considering the searchers said that they had searched that area and the boots weren't there. And why was it that his friends, these guys that were supposed to be his good friends and hunting buddies, why didn't they report him missing? If it hadn't been for his wife, who knows if they would have reported him missing. And by that point, it had already been 3 days since they had last heard from him, so they say. So I don't know, I just find it bizarre that, yes, okay, I know the storm moved in, but that would have been, in my opinion, more cause for them to alert the authorities. And again, I know that these guys were known to hunt illegally and poach or whatever you want to call it, but at the time those men were in a spot that wasn't considered illegal. Who knows where Aaron was at the time, but there's just too many things in this case that don't make sense. And I know a lot of people have covered this case, but it's still unsolved. Personally, I believe Aaron did make it to the cache. He picked up some supplies, he picked up another pair of boots, he swapped out his boots, because I don't believe that he walked that amount of distance barefoot in that amount of snow. And I think something happened to him once he got to that area. Maybe one of the friends came and met him, they got into an altercation, but the fact is that Aaron had both of his weapons, and the fact that he just walked off and passed away because he was scared of getting a ticket, that doesn't compute. And I would definitely like to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. I know a lot of you are familiar with the case, and I know a lot of people have covered it, like I said. A lot of people have requested that I cover it, so I just wanted to present it. And personally, I think that there was more than just him getting lost. I think that there was at least a second party involved, and I hope that one day, the truth will come to light. But I don't think that this experienced outdoorsman just took off his boots and then wandered off to his death. I think that he got his extra supplies and then maybe he saw some elk, or maybe decided to go off that direction thinking that he could, camp by himself for a night. But I think that there's somewhere along the line someone isn't telling the truth. And I just hope and pray that Aaron Hedges' family can get closure and the answers that they deserve one day soon. I want to thank everybody for watching, as always, and please be respectful in the comments if you choose to leave them. Special thank you to co.ag for providing the background music, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Take care. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me to the end. I hope everyone's having a great week. I'm trying to decide on what to do for my next giveaway when we reach 65,000 subscribers. So if you guys have any suggestions, the last time I did a giveaway didn't really go so well because people wouldn't claim their prizes. So if you have any ideas, please let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.